Now, have you ever gotten into an argument with someone over something really trivial? If you've been married for any length of time, you can probably relate. Most of the time when people get in an argument about something trivial, that argument goes much deeper than the little thing that set off the spark. Most times there is some underlying issue or issues that have been unresolved and they just have to boil over at that particular time. Have you ever thought about that? How you got in a big argument over something silly? Right? Now, you're getting into this big argument about shoes in the middle of the floor. But really, the issue is that your spouse is not helping out around the house, or they feel that maybe they're being taken for granted. It had nothing to do with the shoes. A big blow about a washing machine needs replaced. And it's really more about the money being tight for a while now, and an unexpected expense like a new washing machine is causing extra stress. Had nothing to do about the washing machine. Had everything to do about money being tight and the stress that causes. We really need to understand the real reason for some of the things that are going on or causing the trouble. We need to dig down to the root of the problem. When I do premarital counseling classes, we talk about most of the reasons for divorce. And they fall into the categories of either money, sex, or children. They are the three main reasons that lead to divorce. Most fights in a household probably fall into one of these categories, and the root of the issues need to be addressed. So we're going to look at a passage today that causes a dispute, but the reason isn't easily seen. You have to dig a little deeper. For I think six people looked at my teaser video, and the challenge in the teaser video was to figure out what the real root of the issue is that we're going to look at in this passage, because it's not blatantly obvious when you read the passage. So we're looking at Numbers chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. Numbers chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of this Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? They asked. Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. At once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, come out of the tent of meeting, all three of you. So the three of them went out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of a cloud. He stood at the entrance to the tent and summoned Aaron and Miriam. When the two of them stepped forward, he said, listen to my words. When there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So this is a passage where Aaron and Miriam are causing some trouble by speaking out against Moses. They're pointing out that God not only speaks through Moses, but he also has spoken to them as well. So we need to understand who Aaron and Miriam are to understand that God also speaks to them. Aaron represents the priests, the priesthood. And Miriam represents the prophets. So basically you have the priests and the prophets coming together, the leader of these two groups, and they're causing or speaking out against Moses. Now, they are the two most powerful groups within the Jewish people. So again, the priests, the prophets, very powerful groups. So they're two very powerful groups among among the Jewish culture, the Jewish people, and they're almost as powerful as Moses himself. And we do have to remember what Moses has done. He's led the people out of Egypt. He's been able to talk to God and follow God's commands. He has been able to do miracles and teach the people through his process of leading them, not only out of Egypt, but also through the desert to the promised land. But if we look at the start of this passage, we see that Aaron and Miriam are using the fact that Moses was married to a Cushite as a reason for talking about Moses, or talking against Moses. Now, Moses is not married to a woman. The people were instructed, the Jewish people were instructed that they were not to intermarry with other people. So here we have Moses married to a Cushite, which would be intermarrying, and Aaron and Miriam see this as an opportunity to show how Moses is not following the rules or the laws that had been passed down. So they see this as something that they can hold against Moses, maybe point as a flaw or something that he's not doing right, and he can use this as a reason to talk about him, gossip about him, whatever you want to say. But my question is, do you think the real issue is his being married to a Cushite woman? Do you see that's the root of the problem here? Now, so let's look at this with, I love to look at things with common sense. I'm a very logical thinker. That's how my mind works. So when I accepted Christ at the age of 27, it took a lot of logic to get a better understanding before I would make a decision. So let's kind of just look at this from a common sense perspective. Remember Moses, how old was he when he was put in the basket? Was he like 3 months? 3 months old, he's put in the basket, a little water thingy, and he's picked up by the Pharaoh's daughter, right? And he's raised raised basically as what? He's raised as an Egyptian, right? Now, if you go by what the Ten Commandments movie says, you know, he was kind of a young, scrappy man when he realized that he was Jewish. But we don't know when he realized, or someone showed him his swaddling cloth and showed that he was Jewish. So he was raised as an Egyptian. Probably when he was a young man, ready to be married, he lived as an Egyptian or with the pharaohs for 40 years. So you would assume when he was getting younger, as a young man, maybe ready to be married, his options were probably Egyptian, right? He probably wasn't told to go pick someone out among the slaves as a wife, not as a, being raised as a son of Pharaoh or son of Pharaoh's daughter. So when he was a young man ready to be married, he wouldn't have been around a lot of Jewish people. He may not even know he was Jewish at that time. I'm not sure exactly what age he was when he was informed. Then, when he leads the people out, the next 40 years he's wandering around the desert. I'm thinking he had more things on his mind than trying to figure out who he's going to pick out as his next wife at this time. Right? So, here he's wandering out through the desert. Probably not the best time to look for a wife. Now, Cushite, anybody know what nationality a Cushite is? She's an Ethiopian. So he marries an Ethiopian woman. It was not his first wife. His first wife was Zipporah. She was a Mennonite. So as we know, a lot of them had multiple wives. But there's really no explanation here why Miriam had such a problem with this particular woman. Nothing says, hey, this woman, threw water on me or anything like that. There's no reason that she has a personal vendetta against this Cushite woman, except that this is something that we can use to call out Moses, to look flaws in Moses, how he's not perfect and all this. So the real problem is not the Cushite wife. The real problem, or the root of the problem, anybody want to take a guess? jealousy, envy, pride. Let's just throw out all those things because basically they were getting jealous, they were envious, they were pride of the growing power that Moses' position and the influence that he had over the whole nation of Israel. Now, they couldn't really find fault in Moses' leadership. Basically, he was doing a great job for the people because he was following what God had told him to do. So they can't say, hey, he's a horrible leader, look at all these mistakes he's making, because he's not making mistakes. Granted, he made a mistake. He struck the rock rather than yelled at the rock, which is why he didn't get to the promised land. But overall, he's doing a pretty good job for the people. But their pride would not allow them to accept the good job that Moses is doing, especially if it was taken away from the influence that the priests and the prophets were going to have. This is the beginning of a power struggle, right? The priests and prophets have had so much power in the nation of Israel for such a long time. Then Moses, and now remember Aaron and Moses, they're cousins, right? Aaron's the one that can talk really well, right? So not only they're related, but there's a jealousy. It's kind of like if you have a sibling that is always successful, and then the rest of the children trying to get overlooked, right? I told you we all got together in July. I always say my oldest brother ruined it for all of us. He got a full ROTC scholarship that paid for his college and his med school. So the rest of us, my dad said, your oldest brother got his way paid. We're not paying for your college. You're like, Alan, you... like, you know. Then again, I always blame it on because he had no friends, so he studied all the time. The rest of us were involved in sports. But that's another story. But so you get the idea that, you know, Aaron sees Moses and everybody's, Moses is getting all this respect, and Aaron and Miriam, or they're dealing with their jealousy. So rather than deal with the problems of their envy and their pride or their jealousy head on, they came up with some complaint about Moses and his wife. Now, how often do we attack someone's character or motives as a diversion to avoid dealing with our own issues, our own problems? Rather than, you know, fixing what's wrong with us, we're just going to attack somebody else. We're going to attack their character. We're going to attack their motives and what they're doing and throw all the attention on them because, man, I surely don't want to fix my problem or what's going on with me. We blame teachers for our bad grade when we know the real issues that we didn't study or we didn't prepare. We blame someone or call on someone's character because they called us out personally and telling us that something we were doing weren't right. And rather than admit that we got something that we need to correct or that we may have done something wrong, we decide to cause problems behind their back. Maybe we're in a situation where all the evidence proves that we're wrong or our information's not accurate or we may be mistaken. Then rather than admitting that, we'll say everyone's out to get us, or there's a conspiracy, or all this other things, rather than looking at our own possible issues that we need to resolve. And we see that here with Aaron and Miriam. Rather than addressing the issue that they need to resolve, they're trying to attack the integrity of Moses. So you can probably relate to some of these examples in one way or another. And God basically calls Aaron and Miriam out and basically says, how dare you speak about Moses in this way, or how dare you try to cause problems by slandering or attacking someone else's character rather than addressing your own issues. God even indicated how Moses was someone he speaks to face to face. Actually said Moses was so humble that he wasn't going to speak up and defend himself to these accusations. And so God basically stands up for him. And so God took it into his own hands to address Miriam and Aaron. Now, did anybody read the rest of the chapter if you did the teaser video? How does God let Miriam know how wrong she is? At the end of the chapter, the Lord strikes Miriam down with leprosy. And Moses is praised for her healing, but God makes her stay leprous for 7 days. So she had to stay outside of camp for those 7 days. He goes, you wanted power and authority, I'm going to basically banish you for 7 days where you can't be around anybody. And that was God's way of saying, Moses is a man I've chosen, and stop coming up with these accusations and address your own issues of envy, jealousy, and pride. Admit you're wrong when you're wrong instead of attacking someone else's character. So we see in this passage where Aaron and Miriam were trying to cause problems by calling in Moses' character and bringing up his Cushite wife instead of dealing with their own issues of jealousy, envy, and pride. How many times are we not willing to deal with the root of our own personal problems? And instead we try to cast a diversion by calling out someone else's character. We need to try to understand the real reason for the way we are feeling or why we may have such anger or frustration built up inside of us. That's why they always talk about marriage, don't go to bed angry. Because if you let it build up, you build up, you build up, you're having an argument about shoes in the middle of the floor. Instead of addressing issues as they arise. Because I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're getting yelled at and you're like, what did I do? And it was something that was building up and all of a sudden you move something and it's like, where did that come from? So we can take our problems to God and ask Him to help us understand what we are going through and the root of the problem and what we need to address. Rarely is the reason for the blow-up the root of the problem. It is usually much deeper. Let the Lord help you find the root of the problem and allow your brothers and sisters to walk alongside you and encourage you. We are weak, but He is strong. And the body of believers are much stronger working together than we are trying to work on our own. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, first I just want to thank you as we look at this passage. You can see that Aaron and Miriam had their own personal issues that they needed to deal with. And they, rather than deal with those, they chose to attack Moses' character and some trivial issue. And Lord, we know this happens everywhere. It happens at homes, it happens at workplaces, it happens at schools, where people don't address the root of their issue or they don't examine the root of their problem. Instead, they try to cast their problems or accusations on other people, attack other people's characters, and try to blame them for their own unresolved issues. So Lord, we ask for your guidance and strength to help us. That when we're struggling, before we blow up, give us a reason, help us to look deep and see, is there an underlying issue we need to look into? Maybe we need to ask forgiveness. Maybe we need to apologize for something that we blew up for somebody and they did nothing wrong, but it was our own, we like to blow it off as I was having a bad day. Well, having a bad day does not give you the right to take it out on somebody else. It doesn't give you a right to slander somebody else. It doesn't give you a right to make false accusations to try to make someone look bad. We need to make sure that we are not lashing out when we have to dig deep and resolve our own issues. So take those issues to the Lord, whatever they may be. Ask for His guidance and strength. That in the end we can work together, continue to grow in our journey, and the Lord be glorified. We ask this in His precious, powerful, and holy name. Amen.